Okay, and let me share the screen with you. And okay, let me pull up the slides. All right. So the question that was just asked is, this point that the major testable implication of our theory is that this matrix H is symmetric, negative, semi-definite. So in principle, if we have rich data, what kind of data? Well, uh, over time, there are various prices and various quantities purchased by consumers at those prices. That's our data set. Based on that data set, we can estimate demand functions, right? And then we can see if demand functions satisfy this property that we have just talked about, right? This matrix is negative, symmetric and negative semi-definite. Now, uh, when we say symmetric, negative, semi-definite, that also has, nested in that are several implications. For example, one of the implications of that statement is that the diagonal elements of this matrix are negative, right? That means all the slopes of the Hicksian demand functions with respect to own price are negative, right? That's a prediction of the theory. Now, the Hicksian demand functions themselves are not observable, but they can be linked to slopes of the Marshallian demand function through the Slutsky equation, right? So although the Hicksian demand functions are not directly observable or measurable, once we replace this slope by the relevant expression involving Marshallian demand function slopes, then it becomes observable. So, so one of the implications is that the slope of the Marshallian demand function plus this term, which is the income effect of a price change, that sum has to be negative for every good. Yes. Now, if your question is where is this coming from? Why do we say that this Hessian matrix is symmetric, negative, semi-definite? Well, let me trace back the argument. Earlier, we proved that the expenditure function has to be concave, right? Concavity of the expenditure function. Now, the expenditure function being concave means that this Hessian matrix, the matrix of the second derivatives of the expenditure function, written in order, has to be a negative semi-definite matrix. This is something, again, which I discussed earlier, right? What does it mean to say that a function is concave? The primary definition is based on inequalities that I spelled out. But if the function is also differentiable, then a concave function also has this property in terms of derivatives, that it's a Hessian matrix consisting of the second derivatives of the function has to be a negative semi-definite matrix. And that's where this is coming from, okay? So take this matrix, if it's symmetric, negative, semi-definite, this matrix is the same as this matrix. The matrix consisting of second derivatives of the expenditure function is the same as the matrix consisting of the first derivatives of all the Hicksian demand functions. Why is that? That comes from Shepard's lemma that we proved. What did Shepard's lemma say? Shepard's lemma said that Shepard's lemma gave us this relationship that if you differentiate the expenditure function with respect to the ith price, you get the ith Hicksian demand function. It follows straight from that if we take the cross-partial derivative of the expenditure function, first with respect to pi and then with respect to pj, that's the same as the derivative of the ith Hicksian demand function with respect to the jth price. And that is the substitution that we have done here, right? We start with this, and then that becomes this matrix of the first derivatives of the Hickson functions. Does that make it clear?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so today, okay, so we have plenty of people who have come in. So today I'll tie up the loose ends of this topic of choice theory and consumer demand. I'll talk about one application to sort of policy issues, and then I will try to give you a sense of the limitations of the theoretical framework that we have looked at, right? Sometimes, this sort of theory does not adequately account for the rich complexity of behaviors that we see. And there are other theories, other models which try to extend this framework or build alternative frameworks which will explain certain phenomena we see. Of course, I will not be able to get into all of that, those other approaches in detail, but I'll try to give you some sense, some flavor. Okay, so let's talk about an application, all right? And the basic question is, are in-kind donations inefficient, right? Does it make any economic sense to give donations to others, either as gifts or as charitable donations, in kind, right? In the form of, book grants or rice or wheat and so on. Now, well, if you look at the altruistic transfers from individuals or from governments, they're often in kind or in the form of subsidies. Okay, here are some examples. Many governments across the world have public pension funds, right? We talked earlier about the Social Security in the US, where workers pay a payroll tax of about 6%, and employers pay another 6%. And then when an American citizen reaches the age of 65, they get pensions from the government, which is tied to the taxes that they paid, right? It's kind of proportional or almost proportional to the taxes that they paid. So one could ask the question that why does the government have to do this, right? Similarly, employers have sometimes voluntarily have this sort of, private sector companies may have pension programs. So they compensate employers to some extent through salaries, but they also have pension schemes for them. So a kind of more libertarian approach to this would suggest that, the question can be raised that why do employers or governments bother to create these pension schemes, right? Why not just give cash, right? So whatever employers want to give to attract workers, they can incorporate everything into cash salaries, right? And cash is fungible. You can put the cash into savings, but if you prefer, you can use the cash for something else. Yeah. Similarly, government subsidized healthcare. The World Bank often, when it gives aid to poor countries, it will tie the aid, right? It will say that, okay, the aid can only be utilized for building schools or hospitals or roads or what have you. Yeah. In your master's, you have many scholarships, right? Some of them are cash scholarships, but you also have book grants. Some of you have probably received book grants, right? And one criticism that can be made of book grants is similar, which is that why not just give the value in cash? The student can buy books or the student can buy something else, right? It's expanding the choice set of the student uh, with the same value, with the same monetary value. And when it comes to personal gifts, we often, very rarely, certainly in India, we very rarely give gifts in cash. Yeah. Um, so there's a standard criticism using, simple economic theory of the sort that we studied, which says that in-kind grants are inefficient. Cash grants are the most efficient way of transferring resources to another individual. Um, and the argument can be framed in a couple of different ways. You could say that, well, the donor can make the recipient equally well off relative to an in-kind assistance. You can take the recipient to the same level of utility with less money. Yes. And the rough idea is that um, a rupee of cash grant will be more valuable to the recipient because the recipient can allocate it to suit his own preferences or tastes. So let me draw a picture to illustrate the basic idea. Okay. So here's an individual or a household. Let's say there are two goods. There's good one. There's a good X. Could be food, for example. And the other good is M, which is the money spent on everything else. Okay. And the household has a certain income. So the household on its own has a budget constraint, which is represented by this budget line. All right. And let's say the government or some kind individual thinks that this is not enough, right? So given this budget line, the household reaches some level of utility. Let me draw an indifference curve, which is tangent to this budget line. All right. And so left to its own devices, this household will be able to buy this amount of food and spend this amount of money on the other composite commodity. Yes, and let's call this point A. Um, so before talking of in kind, let's say in trying to help this household, the government subsidizes food. Okay, so every unit of food has a market price P, and the government gives a subsidy S. So the effective cost of food becomes P minus S for the household, right? The private cost of food. And that will shift their budget line, right? It will swivel out like this. Everybody is familiar with that, right? If they're not buying any food at all, this won't help them, this subsidy. So this point remains unchanged, this corner, but the other corner moves out. If you're spending all the income on food, then you can buy more food because of the subsidy. Okay, so under this new budget line, there will be a new point of tangency. Let's call that point B. And originally, the household was at utility level 1. Now they're on the higher utility level 2. Okay. Now, the question is, what if the government converts this subsidy into something like a DBT, a direct benefit transfer, right? It's a flat monetary payment into the bank account of the household. to supplement its income, right? And they're free to spend it on food or non-food items, uh, whichever they wish. So if we replace the subsidy program with a cash transfer program like that, an unconditional cash transfer program, how does the budget line shift? So whatever the,
Parallel
sorry, say that again.
Parallel.
shifts outward parallel.
Shifts outward parallelly.
Parallelly, right? So um, now, if the government takes, okay, so it shifts outward parallelly, but where should I place it? What should be its position? It should pass through the point B, right? So how much money was the government paying out? So now let's focus on the point B. So let's go back to the subsidy program. Under the subsidy program, the household was choosing the point B. So what was the total amount of money that the government was giving out as subsidy to this household? I contend that, you drop a line and this distance, this vertical distance is basically what the total value of the subsidy was, right? Not the subsidy per unit, but total amount of subsidy paid out. Why is that? Because if the household was buying this amount of food, call it X double star, after receiving subsidy, with their own income, they could have only spent so much money on other goods. But after receiving the subsidy, they're spending so much money on other goods. So this difference is really what the government, the value of the government assistance is, right? So the government, if the government now takes this money, this amount of money, and just gives it out as a flat cash payment, then the budget line shifts outwards parallelly, but has to pass through this point. And so the new budget line is like this. All right, everybody see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so now the household will re-optimize, right? And the new point of tangency with an indifference curve is not at B, but at a point like C, right? And that point will necessarily involve a lower quantity of X or food than under the subsidy program. Let's call it X triple star, right? So the argument is that, well, if the government converts the subsidy program to a cash transfer program, spending the same amount of money as before, right, without changing the total value of the assistance it's giving out, then it will allow the household to move up from the utility level U2 to an even higher utility level U3. Yes. So why not do that? It doesn't cost the government any more, but it makes the household happier. Right? That's the argument. You can sort of give the argument slightly differently. You can say, okay, if U2 is somehow considered, what is minimally socially acceptable, this is really our target, then we can meet this target in a cheaper way, or the government can meet it more cheaply. Right? Why? Because if it gives out the same amount of monetary assistance, it pushes the household up to U3. So instead of doing that, the government can, give a little less money, and that'll shift the budget line back towards the original one till there's a tangency achieved with the indifference curve at level U2, right? So we can call this point D. So with the same amount of money, you can make the household happier, or you can get the household to the target level of utility U2 at lower cost, right? If you switch to a cash transfer program instead. So that's the argument.
Yeah, hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, we are saying here we are shifting from trickle U2 to U3 because we are government is granting cash in hand. So now we can spend it according to our own
That's
plan.
right. Yeah.
Okay, thank
I mean, it's a little more than that. That's the sort of broad idea. Yes. But, um, the subsidy and the cash transfer programs make the household face uh, different relative prices. Under the cash transfer program, there's no tampering with market prices, right? Under the cash transfer program, uh, they will buy food at a price of P, the market price. Under the subsidy program, the price food is made artificially cheap. Yes, and so one way to put it is that that distortion, price distortion, subsidies have this price distortion, and that makes it inefficient, right? And the same argument is applied to other kinds of subsidies too. So in India, we have lots of different subsidies, right? There are, electricity for farming is subsidized, right? The idea is to again, boost the income of farmers by defraying some of the input costs. But one possible consequence is that there's overuse of electricity and water, right? And so we have power cuts and we have falling water tables because of the subsidies given to electricity and water in certain kinds of uses. And so the recommendation would be that replace the subsidies by direct cash transfers. Try to give the same amount of assistance without distorting the prices, without making these things artificially cheap, because then that would lead to overuse with its consequences, right? That's not efficient. Private users of water and electricity are not internalizing the social cost of water and electricity, right? And that's why they are uh, making inefficient use of those resources.
Sir,
Sir, in practice, why don't we do
Say that again, I didn't hear it.
sir, in practice, why don't we do that? The cash transfer.
Yes, so I'm coming to that. Okay, um, so this is not the end of the story.
you.
So the
So
same
why?
scenario applies to proportionate and lump sum taxes, right?
Yes, yes, exactly.
So why?
sir, isn't this claim a bit subjective? Because it doesn't depend on the on what the government is aiming.
Mhm.
Because if it is aiming for the provision of food, then direct benefit transfer may actually defeat the purpose. People may spend it on other things, and the purpose is fully defeated.
Right.
So, isn't this
Oh,
claim subjective?
okay. So in the context of our food subsidy, right? Let's come back to that concrete example. Um, One argument often heard in defense of the in-kind or subsidy programs that we have instead of DBT is that we have statistics on nutrition indicators in India, and they're very bad. Um, the last I saw, there was some 39% of children are stunted. They have low height for age. Um, the incidence of low body mass index among women is also very high. And compared to other countries at the same level of per capita GDP, our nutrition and health indicators are not very good, right? We are below average if we control for per capita GDP. So people make the argument that, well, the purpose is not just to, give some economic assistance to poor households, it's also to improve our nutrition. Yes. Now, let me point out that,
So one question, sir.
yes,
So in this diagram, why budget line has to pass from point B in case of cash transfer by the government?
it's not any odd cash transfer. The cash transfer is, so I want to compare a subsidy program and a cash transfer program, which costs the same amount to the government, right? So I want to take the money that the government was spending on the subsidy program and use the same amount of money as the cash transfer. And it's that criterion which makes the budget line pass to point B. Let me try to explain that again. Uh, um, I've never figured out what happens. Sometimes it becomes permanent. Anyway, let me try to just erase all of this. So once again, this is X and this is M. M is money spent on everything else. X is the quantity of food, rice, let's say. So you have some budget line like this. And then under that budget line, let's say the point of tangency is here. And then the government starts the subsidy program and it goes to B. All right. So B means what? If the household, after the subsidy program is started, the household is buying this amount of food and is spending this amount of money on other stuff, right? Now, if they hadn't received the subsidy and bought this amount of food, they would only have this amount of money to spend on other goods, right? So where is this difference coming from? This difference is effectively coming from the government, right? So this difference is basically the subsidy per unit times the amount of units that the household is buying, right? This is the total, capital S, the total amount of subsidy they receive. So what we are saying is, let's take the same amount of money, let the government take the same amount of money and convert it to a flat cash transfer, right? So they give out the same cash transfer. Now, if they give out the same cash transfer, same amount of money, then one of the choices of the household will still be point B, right? They're receiving effectively the same amount of money. But the budget line will not be this flat budget line. It'll be a steeper budget line because now they're facing market prices. All right. If the government was giving out more money or less money, then it doesn't have to pass through B. It has to pass through B because whatever the government was spending on the subsidy program, that is exactly how much they are giving out as a cash transfer now. Okay, so now coming back to the question, you could say, and the argument is often made that what if, the government gives out cash and instead of spending it on food, some households go out and spending it on, alcohol and gambling and various kinds of vice goods, right? Or buy fancy phones, maybe, I don't know, that sort of stuff. Okay, now here there are two philosophical strands, right? How do we judge other people's welfare? That is the fundamental question here. How do we judge other people's welfare? When can we say or decide that somebody has been made better off? Yes?
So now, maybe through their utility value that they derive out of a.
So that's one possible approach, right? We can judge their welfare by their own preferences or utility function. We can adopt the posture that, well, I'm not going to, impose my values and my tastes on somebody else. Okay, whatever they themselves consider good for them is good for them in my view. All right. So, so if they're happy buying more food, I'll consider them better off. If they're happy spending it more on buying cricket bats and balls and playing with their neighbors, that's fine with me either, or two. Even then, I'll consider them better off. Yes. So this philosophical view is called welfarism. We judge the welfare of others by their own utility function. But somebody else might say that, we'll judge other people's welfare by our preferences for them, right? So in some sense, we are imposing some other utility function on them. We say, this is the utility function, these are the preferences they ought to have. If they're poor, their preferences should put a lot of more weight on food compared to, vice goods. And this approach can be called, this broad approach can be called paternalism. Yes. So if you take a welfarist posture, then the argument that I just spelled out is valid for you, right? That yes, then you shouldn't abandon the subsidy program and move to cash transfers, because, by the recipient's own reckoning, that'll allow him to move to a higher utility function, higher utility value. But suppose the government's objective, suppose the government's, right, so suppose the government, instead of you, which is the recipient's utility, the government has its own utility function for the recipient, and that's basically X, let's say, right? Let's take a simple extreme form, that the objective is not to make this guy happier, but to make him healthier, or make him better fed, right? So the government is trying to maximize X. So as you can see, if we convert it to a cash transfer program, right? So remember that when there was a subsidy, there was a tangency at point B, right? So if we switch to a cash transfer at B, it becomes steeper, the budget line. And so the substitution effect will be the effect, really. And so as a result, the new part of tangency will be in this direction, right? So compared to the subsidy program, the household will consume less food, right? So if there's a paternalistic objective to make them eat more, then the subsidy program would be better.
So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
would it not depend on the shape of the indifference curve, the way we are drawing actually?
No.
I mean,
well, it will, but as long as it's the indifference curves are convex or strictly convex, this argument is unassailable, right?
okay, sir.
Because the difference, intuitively, the difference between, in both cases, the government is giving away the same amount of money, right? In the case of the subsidy, food is privately cheaper to the individual. In the case of the cash transfer, it's more expensive between the two programs. So therefore, when the individual or household is receiving subsidies and food has been made artificially cheaper to them, in that case, they'll consume more food relative to the cash transfer case.
So,
yes.
So what if X is a inferior good?
Doesn't matter.
So like after decrease in price, won't it be like they will also decrease the quantity of consumption?
No, because the movement, the comparison, the movement from B to C is essentially through only the substitution effect, not the income effect.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, personally, I've read and also heard of several cases wherein, people procure goods on subsidy and then they go out there and sell it at an expensive, a higher rate in, say, the black market and then get whatever they anyway wanted to. So, will that not essentially defeat the purpose of what we're trying to do, as in to make them consume more food?
Sure. So if resale is possible, right, you get some subsidized quantity, but you can go and sell it at the open market price P, unsubsidized, then all bets are off, absolutely. Then the opportunity cost of food to the household is still P, not P minus S, right? You get the subsidized amount and sell it off on the market. So the question becomes moot if perfect resale is possible without any kind of transaction cost or any kind of hassle, right? So you're absolutely right on that. But you know, uh, in certain things, for example, if um, if your electric meter is subsidized, for example, right? Electricity, you have a home meter or meter at a factory or a farm, and you receive a subsidy to consume electricity. Now that is not transferable, right? You can't store that electricity and then sell it to somebody else at a higher market price, right? We have multiple electricity rates. Consumer rates are lower, industrial rates are higher, but the scope for arbitrage is absent given the very nature of electricity. It's not storable and transferable. So,
Right, sir. I was mainly talking with regard to the LPG subsidies that, the government started to give.
yes, so LPG is transferable, right? But there are costs involved. So for small amounts, the cost may be too high. So first of all, we do see, there are all these reports and stories about domestic LPG cylinders, which is cheap, being fitted into auto rickshaws, for example. Yeah. But it's a hassle. It's not easy, right? So it sits somewhere in between the electricity case and maybe the food case. Or
Okay, sir. Thank
kerosene.
you.
Yeah, yeah. Now, this.
So, hello.
Yes.
Sir, here, if we try to conclude all these things, so here we are saying that from consumer points of view, the DBT program is beneficial for them, and from government point of view, the subsidy program will make
Government
them
point of
better
view
off.
depends on the government's attitude, given on whether the government has a welfarist outlook or its underlying philosophy is welfarism, that we are not going to, we are going to judge people's welfare by their own wishes, or whether the government's posture is paternalistic, right? This is an ethical choice. This is a philosophical choice. This is not something which is objective or written in stone, right? I can be welfarist and you can be paternalistic, and there's no absolute sense in which one can say that I'm right, you're wrong, or the other way around. Yes?
Okay, sir.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, in the graph, how are we representing, an in-kind transfer rather than,
You're right.
subsidized rate?
You're right. So I started with a comparison between subsidy versus cash transfer. Let me now come to the in-kind. You're absolutely right. You spotted that, there's something which is off. I didn't really represent an in-kind transfer here. So let me do that. And actually, if you look at our own food subsidy program, that's an in-kind transfer. How does it go? It goes that, households with ration cards get 5 kgs of rice practically for free. Let's approximate that. It's like very small amounts. Uh, it's not like, every kg of rice that they buy is subsidized. It's the first 5 kgs are practically free. And whatever else they buy, they have to buy at open market prices, right? That's not what we are representing here. What we are representing here is a flat unit subsidy applicable no matter whether they're buying 5 kgs or 10 kgs or 15 kgs, right? That's what this picture represents. So let's talk about in-kind transfers then, and compare that with cash transfers. Okay. So again, let's draw the picture. And this is our food access. This is other goods. Initial budget line of the poor household is here. Okay. And if there's a cash transfer, what will be the budget line? It will be like this. Initially, before any assistance, suppose, the point of tangency was here. So let's fix that, A. Okay, so if there's a cash transfer, this is the budget line, right? Let's say the government gives cash transfers of, worth 5 kgs of rice. Yeah. Now, instead of the cash transfer, if there was an in-kind transfer of 5 kgs, so cash one is cash transfer. Let's say price of rice is 20 rupees a kg. All right. So the government gives a cash transfer of, let's say, 100 rupees. That's one policy, and that'll create this green budget line. But suppose instead of cash transfer, the government gives in-kind transfer of 5 kgs of rice. The value of that is also 100 kgs, right? If the price is 20 kgs. But this is given literally in kind. And let's make the further assumption that the household cannot go and resell these 5 kgs on the market because of high transaction costs or what have you. Now, what is the budget line under this program? What does it look like?
Parallel to x-axis.
Will be kinked.
Will be kinked. So without any kind of assistance, either cash or in kind, if the household didn't buy any food, they would be able to spend this amount. So this is basically their income, right? This is why. Okay, now if they're getting an in-kind transfer and they cannot resell it, then essentially, even if they don't buy any food out of their own money and spend their entire income on other goods, even then their food consumption will be 5 kgs, right? This is 5 kgs. And after that, they can use some of their income to buy some extra food over and above the 5 kgs. And if you start looking at those choices, then you basically graze this. So the red is the budget line for the in-kind program. The green is the budget line for the cash transfer. Right? Now, the question is, let's go back to the cash transfer case. Okay? Under cash transfer and the green budget line, what will the household choose? Well, it depends on where the point of tangency is, right? So I can draw 2 cases. I can think of 2 cases. Case 1. Suppose the point of tangency on the green budget line is here. All right, let's say it's, it's some higher amount than 5 kgs.
So will it be the full flat portion or just that will be the dotted one? I guess the red one.
No, wait a
The
minute.
flat portion, shouldn't it be the dot?
At this point, I'm asking you to think about just the green budget line. So we are thinking about the cash transfer, right? We are comparing 2 different policies. So first, let's take the cash transfer. The household's budget line becomes the green one, and the choice will be wherever there's tangency, right? So let's say the tangency is at point B. It is this portion of the, after the kink, right? This is possible, right? It depends on what the indifference curves are like. I'm not saying this is inevitable, but this is one possible case, right? And now if we go to the in-kind program, so we have the red budget line, then the optimal choice is still point B, right? Point B is better than any point on this part of the red budget line, and it's also better than this flat portion of any. The flat portion anyway is irrelevant. You know, if you're going to choose on the flat portion, you might just as well choose this corner. And since the tangency is here, the point B is better than this kink for the household by their own preferences. So in this case,
So, sir, isn't it in this case we are assuming more is better, like more food is better?
more food is better throughout.
So it's like for X kg in kind transfer. If you are like
More food is better in any case. That's not in dispute over here. More food in better just basically means higher indifference curves represent higher utility. More food is better from the government's perspective, from the household's perspective, right? That's not an issue at all. Just follow, follow the logic I'm spelling out. It's not hard. When the budget line is a green line, just suppose, I mean, it's possible that the point of tangency is here at B. That's what I'm calling case 1. And when that's the case, if we replace the green budget line by the red kinked budget line, the optimal choice for the household remains point B. All right?
So that is what I'm not able to understand. Why is it still point B?
Give me another point on the red budget line which is better. Look at the red budget line and give me another point which is better for the household. For the household, not the government, the household.
How about, I mean, I'm not sure. How about the king itself?
So if I the kink, this point, all right? This point lies on the red budget line, but it also lies on the green budget line, doesn't it?
Okay.
So when the household had the green budget line, did it choose this point?
No.
It chose B. So why would they now shift to this point?
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So here in case 1, it makes no difference. Cash and in-kind are equivalent, aren't they? The government could be welfarist, the government could be paternalistic, doesn't matter. Outcome is the same. Now, of course, there's another possibility, which is this. Here, under the cash program, you have a green budget line. Under the in-kind program, you have a kinked budget line like this, right? This is the point of the kink. And under the green budget line, suppose the point of tangency was here. So this corresponds to 5 kgs of food. If you gave the household a cash transfer, then maybe they would on their own consume 3 kgs, let's say, less than 5 kgs. Okay. Now we switch to the red budget line. We move from the cash transfer program to the in-kind program. Now what will be the optimal choice of the household?
Corner point.
The kink, right? Basically, you want to get as close, the household wants to get as close as possible to the point C along this budget line. They want to, C is their optimal if they had full freedom, but they can't get to C. And so the closest to C that they can get to is B. And so that'll be their choice. So this is our case 2. Okay. And here it will make a difference. So here, if the government wants to maximize food consumption for the household, then they would prefer the in-kind transfer rather than the cash transfer, right? Under in-kind transfer, consumption is 5 kgs. Under cash transfer, consumption is 3 kgs. Yes. So let's get back to case 1. This is a case where it's said that the transfer is infra-marginal, right? If the household had full flexibility, full freedom how to spend this amount of money, they would have bought more than 5 kgs, and the government is giving them 5 kgs. So it's less than the marginal quantity of food they were planning to buy anyway. And this is the case where the transfer is infra-marginal. Now, which case is relevant to us in India? Do you know? That requires a bit of data, right? That's an empirical issue. In India, given our PDS system, are we in this case or that case? What's the average consumption of grains, rice or wheat, by the average Indian household? Average monthly consumption. Anyone want to take a guess? Roughly, ballpark, not exact numbers. How much is it? 3 kgs?
2 kgs.
Huh?
2 kgs. Kgs.
4 kgs.
How many?
4 kgs.
4 kgs?
2 kgs.
Anybody has a higher guess?
4 kgs.
4 kgs.
5 kgs per person.
How much do you eat, you think, in a month?
But it will depend on the state also.
Yes, so I'm
Like
talking
some
about
states.
average. Remember, it's not just direct consumption. You know, you make other stuff with rice too, right? Like your.
So we are talking about a family or a per person, like individual
Per
member?
person per month.
Sir, it will be around 7 to 10, I think.
Per person per month, 5 kg.
You can get that number from NSS surveys, and it's approximately 10 kgs, right? Remember, it's, you know, rice is consumed in many different forms. Yeah, it goes into other food items, etc. So it happens to be 10 kgs, and almost every household, right, an overwhelming majority of households consumes more than 5 kgs per month per person. Now, the PDS allowance is 5 kgs. That's way less than the actual consumption. So we are very much in case 1. Yeah, very much in case 1. So once you see that, and if you believe in our consumer theory, you would say that, well, this is a false debate. Yes, paternalists and welfareists can you know, argue with each other till their voice is hoarse. But what difference does it make? It's an infra-marginal transfer, so it shouldn't affect choices. So whether you want to, you know, increase food consumption as much as possible, calorie intake or not, at the end of the day, if you convert to cash transfers, grain consumption shouldn't rise or fall. Yes. Seems to be much ado about nothing, at least going by this sort of theoretical reasoning. Yeah.
So can you please tell the term inframarginal?
Inframarginal. So in this case, what is happening? If you cash transfer means you give the household full flexibility over those resources, right? When you give them 5 kgs of rice, you're taking away their flexibility. When you give them 100 rupees, they can still get 5 kgs of rice with those 100 rupees, right? But they can also get other things if they want. So when you give them full freedom, if they were going to buy 10 kgs of rice anyway, when they have full flexibility, and now instead of full freedom and cash transfers, if you give them 5 kgs of rice, the amount you're giving them is less than what they would have bought anyway. And that's a case where we say it's infra-marginal. The marginal quantity that the household was going to buy is 10 kgs, and you're giving an amount which is inside that.
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir. Got
Just a small conceptual doubt. So when you are plotting a in-kind transfer, the red line. So after kink, in case second, the red line is slightly below or away from green line, or it is like
No,
you
it
have plot.
grazes the green line. It's, of course, I mean, they're the same. I mean, just I didn't want to sort of write it on the green line because that would be confusing, right? So the
Okay.
here the red and green are coincident. Okay. So what do we learn from that? What is the takeaway? Any kind of counter argument or consideration that anybody wants to throw out here? One issue, look, theory is all fine, right? At the end of the day, we should always check what our theories are telling us, verify against data empirically, right? So maybe this theory is wrong. Maybe there's some sort of psychological or whatever, some factor that we have missed out.
Sir, in-kind cases are much more prone to red tape, bureaucratic processes, and the whole gamu of things that can
Okay.
compared to cash transfer.
Yes. So there are other considerations between cash, this comparison between cash and in-kind, which I haven't taken into account. There are considerations for the supply side, for example, and this is what you just mentioned. So, in-kind transfers like the PDS that we have, there are lots of leakages and inefficiencies and extra costs. So some of the grain is diverted by unscrupulous, fair price shop owners. Then you have extra costs because the FCI has to build go downs and store it there, and sometimes rats eat it and so on. So some people might say that, well, even if they're theoretically equivalent like this in terms of nutritional outcomes or what have you, cash transfers just there's less theft, less leakage, less excess cost, right? Sending money to people's bank accounts are easier. Now, people from the other side will say, okay, again, theoretically, they're equivalent, but the architecture to give food to families, grains to families, and the architecture of cash disbursement are not the same. Many households don't have bank accounts, and there's no sort of good database of what their bank accounts are. And then under cash transfers, there will be lots of exclusion errors. Many people would be left out. But since the PDS system has functioned for decades, right, that has been set up more, and so that will leave out fewer people. Okay, but these are all supply side considerations. So yes,
Sir, I would like to add something.
right. So let me just finish that. So the point is absolutely valid. We may want to choose between them based on these supply side considerations. But right now we are looking at the demand side considerations, right? In economics, it's always useful if we break down the arguments into separate categories and try to understand them one by one, right? So on the demand side, on the basis of demand side factors, one could say that these inframarginal transfers shouldn't make a difference. Yes, go ahead.
Sir, there is an issue of procurement as well when it comes to direct cash transfers. Like like if the government is aiming to provide housing facilities to poor, so it cannot simply provide cash to the households so they can buy houses. It is again important to help them procure those houses. So isn't in-kind transfers
Yes,
better in such cases?
absolutely. So in some cases, for certain kinds of goods, the market may not exist or may not function very well, right? So for example, if in a remote area, there are no good schools and hospitals. So you can give somebody crores of rupees. If they're living there, they still won't be able to access those things, right? So for certain kinds of in-kind assistance, like, public schools and hospitals, especially away from the metros, away from the big cities where we have these things, There's a separate argument for in-kind transfers. Yes. There it basically, what is being transferred in kind is like a public good practically. But it's difficult to make that argument for food, because practically everywhere in the country there's a market for food. Yes. So people can buy it from a private market if you give them the money. And that's different from schools and hospitals.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yes?
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, but why do we want to base our choice of policy based on some assumption or observation that India lies in a particular case? So let's go with that. I mean, we can see that direct benefit transfers are the best choice under any case. So why not go with that?
They are not the best choice under any case. So what we discussed theoretically, in case one, if the situation is like this, if you're in this case, then at least from the demand side, it won't make a difference whether it's cash or kind. But if you're in this case, then it will make a difference, right? Under cash transfers, they'll consume 3 kgs. Under in-kind transfers, they'll consume 5 kgs. And then it depends what your attitude is. If your attitude is welfareist, you want to adopt cash transfers. And if your attitude is paternalistic and in favor of more calories, more grains, then you would like to choose in-kind transfers. So here it is relevant. It does make a difference. Right?
Okay.
And there's no sweeping answer that DBT is better. It depends on whether you're welfareist or whether you're paternalistic. Okay, now ultimately always take theoretical conclusions with a pinch of salt, because we need to have some empirical feedback that our theoretical reasoning is on track. So given that the transfers are infra-marginal, we have to empirically ask that indeed, does it make a difference to people's choices or not? Yes. Some people have argued based on data. There's a paper in the EPW by Himanshu of JNU and Abhijit Sen, where at least by their econometric methodology, they are saying that there is still some stickiness, meaning that the PDS in kind, in actual real world behavior, it might make a difference even though we are in case one. Okay. If you want, I can give you the reference. Maybe I'll put that link on the course website. But there's an empirical issue of whether this is true or not. Question? Okay, let me show you. Yes.
Sir, at different income levels, is it possible for the preferences of a person to change?
Of course. We allow that for that anyway, right? None of the argument depends on the fact that, whether the good is a normal good, what its income elasticity is. That just doesn't play a role here. Yes. I'm running out of time, so let me show you a little video clip which you may find interesting. By the way, on my YouTube channel, I'm also posting videos for the other course, the second year course which I'm teaching. So don't get confused, right? All the videos relevant to the course will appear on the course website, right? Okay, now personal gifts, as I said, are almost always in kind. So why is that?
So may you please repeat?
I said, when it comes to personal gifts, not government assistance, not private charity.
Maybe you won't like it.
Right? Well, personal gifts. If you next Diwali, if you give your mother a bunch of cash, she will suddenly be surprised probably and probably be upset, right?
Sir, we can differentiate on the basis of emotions. Like cash don't carry that amount of emotions which like gifts are in kind of gifts like carrying.
So
It's
gifts can be
efforts.
memories as well.
Memories. Is there a cash amount which will, okay, there's something you buy associated with memory. If you get a whole lot of cash, and show your love by, the lakhs of rupees you gave as a gift, wouldn't that make up for it?
So that just seems very, for some reason, unsavory in personal relationships.
We are trying to understand why unsavory. I'm not contesting it. Yes, I think there's a good reason, but I'm trying to put my finger on what the reason is. I'm trying to sort of open up this box of, saying I'm totally sympathetic with the sentiment. And I think there's a good reason for that, right? But by calling it by various names like unsavory, that there's a taboo against it, we're asking why? Can we unpack that sentiment? So let me show you this clip from this American TV serial called Seinfeld. Some of you may have seen it. So the woman, it's her birthday, and this is her friend, and he's giving her a gift, and in between, another friend, Kramer, will come up and give a gift. So let's just watch it. Can you hear the sound?
How could I not?
Can you hear
Yes,
the sound?
sir.
Okay,
Yes.
let me play it.
Like it, of course I like it.
You could not like it.
Just the fact that you remembered means everything.
Of course I remembered. It reminded me every day for 2 months. Oh, the card.
Cash?
What do you think?
You got me cash?
Well, that's right. I figure you could go out and get yourself whatever you want. No good?
Are you my uncle?
Hey, come on. It's $182 there. I don't think that's anything to sneeze at.
Let me see the card. To a wonderful girl, a great pal, and more.
Hey. Oh, Elaine, I'm glad you're here. Stay right here. I'm gonna be right back. Stay.
Pal? You think I'm your pal?
I said, and more.
I am not your pal.
What's wrong with pal? Why is everybody so down on pal?
Oh, what is this?
Yeah.
You got me something?
Yeah, open.
Oh,
This.
Kramer! Oh, the bench! You got me the bench that I
It's pretty good, huh? Great. You remember when we were standing there and she mentioned it? I made a mental note of it.
Well, goody for you.
Oh, yeah. See, I'm very sensitive about that. I mean, someone's birthday comes up, I keep my ears open. So what'd you get her?
$182.
Cash? You gotta be kidding. What kind of gift is that? That's like something her uncle would give her.
Think where man's glory most begins and ends, and say my glory was I had such a friend.
Yates.
Yeah.
Oh.
Could you excuse us, please?
Okay. So what do you think? So I'll tell you my interpretation of this clip, and it gets. Uh, there's one very significant comment which appears twice in the clip, right? Both Elaine and the other friend Kramer, they say, "Why have you given her cash? Are you her uncle?" Right? Um, so a distant acquaintance like uncles, it suggests could give cash. There's no big deal with that. But somebody close, right? Sibling, parent or a child, spouse are not supposed to give cash. They're supposed to find something for them. And what Kramer said is that, he was paying attention to Elaine's, what excited her. So when she expressed admiration for this bench, he made a note of that, right? So the object he gave is of much lesser value. It probably cost him $20, whereas Jerry gave her $182 in cash, right? So the monetary value was much bigger. But Jerry's gift doesn't demonstrate that he was paying attention to what she likes or dislikes, right? So in this case, the gift is a test of intimacy, a test of whether we are paying attention to our loved ones to whom we are giving the gift, right? It's not just some transfer of resources or value. It's more than that. It's this test of intimacy and the test of knowledge of the other person's preferences. Yes. So if you give the wrong gift, it's possible that you go wrong, right? You try to take a guess, but you give something which she doesn't really like that much. Then you've given the wrong gift and you've failed the test. But if you give a cash gift, you've refused the test to take the test, right? And nobody ever passed a test by refusing to take it. So so if you're social beings, then we have to take the test. So that tells us that, not everything which looks like a transaction, a gift, to a narrow economic view is a transfer of some resources from you to somebody else. But it has other dimensions, and especially in personal interactions, it has other dimensions, and which we shouldn't forget. And when it has a signaling dimension, when it has an information revelation dimension like this, then this kind of cash versus kind argument is certainly not the end of the story, right? The kind of indifference curve pictures that we drew. Questions?
Sir?
Yes. Let me just ask you, again, I've run into bad time management. Do you have a class after this?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Will you indulge me and give me 5 extra minutes?
Yes, sir. Sure, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sure, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, quick question.
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, when we are comparing cash and gifts in kind, sir, shouldn't it vary from person to person? Who gives, someone may give more importance to cash instead of kind transfer, and shouldn't it depend on the economic conditions or financial condition of the families? Poor family may prefer cash as gifts.
Sure. So your friend, you have a friend who is struggling to pay, wants to, struggling to pay college fees or whatever, or is in great economic distress, and in those situations you could say, well, here's some monetary assistance. I'm not saying that every transfer of resource between two people who are socially close has to be in kind, right? I'm showing you an example where, it is true if you look around that there's a general feeling that usually, personal gifts like birthday gifts, anniversary gifts, Diwali gifts, these are supposed to be some item which you have thought about and which you have bought, right? Instead of just handing over some cash. So I'm trying to address what may be the reasons for that. That is not putting down a 10 commandments, one of the 10 commandments that, never give cash to a loved one. That's, I'm not swinging to the other extreme. And society doesn't practice the other extreme. But society does have this expectation that personal gifts usually have to be in kind.
And so even society also prefer to have hospitals for big diseases than small lump sum amount of money from government. They expect health services.
Yeah, but I already talked about that, right? So things which are not well provided by the private market, if we need them as citizens, there's a straightforward reason why it has to be in kind, right? Because the market is not providing it to us.
So what is the difference between the case where cash or in-kind transfers are equivalent and the case where we are taking infra-marginal transfers?
When the transfer is going back to the sort of conventional textbook argument, right? When the transfer is inframarginal, they are equivalent. Choices remain the same under both programs.
So sir, they're the same case essentially.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Right. Okay, let me skip this. You can read it. I think I talked about the pizza experiment earlier, right?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Anyway.
Give dentist one example.
Let me jump to this, yeah? I mean, you can read this slide. It's pretty simple. Now, there's often a criticism that in these sorts of economic models, and by the way, there are many, there's a choice theory has a lot more than what we see in textbooks. But if you take the textbook stuff that we have learned, one criticism is that there's a very narrow view of human beings, that we are assuming that human beings are totally selfish and money-minded, right? Now, that is not true, right? It's fairly easy to see. On the axis, you could measure, in our diagrams, you could think of the axis being, apples I consume and oranges I consume. And in that case, I'm just looking at my own consumption and I'm just obsessed with that. But on the axis, you could put down, how much I donate to World Wildlife Fund to save endangered animals versus how much I give to charities which feed or clothe children in poor countries, right? And there, the usual analysis would apply. If one kind of charity becomes tax deductible, it'll create a substitution effect towards that, and so on and so forth. So there's the framework doesn't have to assume, there's no sort of fundamental assumption there that people are totally selfish or they're obsessed just about what they're consuming. But the framework does have limitations, and those limitations are more nuanced and subtle, right? So here's one example, and it has to do with consequentialism, right? So here's a story, and you will find this in Amartya Sen's article called Rational Fools, okay? So there are two friends, Laurel and Hardy, and they have two cakes. One cake is big and the other is small, and they don't have any knives, so they cannot cut up these cakes and divide it. They're indivisible. So one of them has to eat the big cake and the other the small cake. Yeah, that's a given. So Laurel magnanimously asks his friend Hardy to divide, to decide who should get the big one and who should get the small one. And Hardy takes the big one himself and gives Laurel the small one. Okay. And Laurel is very upset. He says, if I were doing the division, I would take the small one. And Hardy retorts, that's exactly what you've got. I've given you the small one. So why are you upset? What's the problem? Okay. Now, Hardy does have a point. Laurel is saying, I would have taken the small one, given you the big one. Hardy is saying, that's exactly what I did. So, but all of us can intuitively relate to Hardy's sentiment. Laurel's sentiment, the guy who's upset. Yes. And how do we reconcile the two lines of arguments, one by Laurel, the other by Hardy? Where is Laurel coming from? See, Laurel cares about the process by which the allocation came about. It's not enough information in his worldview. Who got which cake? Who made that choice? Who made that division is important. So when he sees his friend giving him the small one, he learns something about his friend, that he's selfish, that he's not generous, that he doesn't put enough value on the friendship. And that's why he's upset. Okay. So in Laurel's sentiment cannot be understood in a consequentialist framework. In a consequentialist framework, all that matters is that who consumes what at the end of the day. Right? In a consequentialist framework, you can have altruism. Yes. If Laurel, for example, just loved his friend a lot and wanted him to have the big cake, then it wouldn't matter who made the choice, right? Once his friend took the big cake, Laurel would still be happy. So, right? So certain kinds of other regarding preferences, some kinds of caring about others is very easy to fit into the framework that we have studied. But only those kinds of other regarding preferences, only those kinds of, altruism, which are of the consequentialist nature, where all I care about is who gets what at the end of the day. I may care about who, how much poor children in Africa get, right? But in a consequentialist manner. If that's the nature of my concern, then this kind of framework can easily fit that in. But if I care about things where I also care about the process through which the allocation came about, then the kind of utility theory that we have built up will not be able to analyze that well, right? Question?
So would it be right to say that most of the economics that we are studying is in a way consequential?
Absolutely, yes. So this is what people, non-economists often don't get. The limitation of this framework, right, that we just studied, is not the assumption of selfishness, because that indeed is not a deep assumption in that framework. The limitation is consequentialism, which is what I try to illustrate through this example, through this anecdote, right? We are not making a strong assumption that human beings are selfish, but we are making a strong assumption that they're consequentialist, that they only care about outcomes and nothing else, not the process through which it came about. Right? There are, when it comes to inequality and people's attitudes towards inequality, right? Anybody who cares about inequality cares about others, right? It's not just being selfish, right? I'm concerned about how people are doing in the rest of society, right? But you could care about inequality in two ways. You could take you may want to have more equality of outcomes. Okay, you may say that, well, the gap between rich and poor is too large, and that in itself is a good reason for the government to try and redistribute income. Okay, that would be a view, for example, for philosopher John Rawls. I mean, I'm simplifying a whole lot, but roughly speaking. But some other people, and one good example is the philosopher Robert Nozick, would say that, look, you can show me the Gini coefficient, you can show me the income distribution data, you can show me the ratio of the incomes of the top 10% and the bottom 10%. I won't be able to judge whether that's good or bad, because I want to know how that inequality came about, right? Did it come about through sort of fair competition? Everybody had access to the same jobs, the same education, etc. Or, did a small elite sort of capture the resources through unfair means? And that's what led to the inequality. So the process matters for other people. So the two competing concepts is equality of outcomes versus equality of opportunity, right? And equality of opportunity is much more of a non-consequentialist nature. The process there is important, and we need information about the process to judge whether something is good or bad, or some allocation is good or bad. Okay, so I will stop there. Um, I'm continuously struggling with time management. There were one or two other things that I wanted to talk about. So maybe in tomorrow's lecture, I'll take a little bit of time to wrap this up and then get into production theory. Okay.
Sir, I have a small query since it's
Yeah.
the end of the class, if I could.
Yeah, sure.
So you just mentioned about equality of opportunity and equality of outcome and how they are dramatically different.
Right.
So I just wanted to ask this is one thing that has been in the push recently in the news quite frequently, is that reserving, for example, quotas on uh, board of directors for companies. Some research was published that I read recently for women in particular to reserve quotas on board of directors. So would this be
So
equality?
let me sort of formally end the session, right? So I'll stop the recording.